Detroit Become Human was one of those games I completely missed upon its release. I did see some promotional material, but I wasn't really sure what it was about. It always intrigued me, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be for me, as I couldn't take the concept seriously. I was still curious about exploring its story. It's taken me 3 years and a Steam sale in order to pick up the game, and I'm glad I did. I've played through the game twice, taken a few weeks to collect my thoughts, and I knew I had to share my thoughts on it. This isn't going to be my usual critique or analysis video, more of a commentary with some critiquing and analysing thrown in, and as to how I experienced and interpreted the game, and how it has held up 3 years later. There may be a few nitpicks I observed from playing the game, but this will be me mostly running through my experience. There will be spoilers for the story, if that makes sense. Well, it kind of doesn't due to the huge branching narrative, but I feel I should put out a warning just in case. But I think the game has been out long enough now. I'm going to run through quickly as to what Detroit Become Human is, for those who are unsure like me. Detroit Become Human is a narrative-driven game, developed by the French-based studio Quantic Dream, responsible for titles such as Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, which I have yet to play at the time of writing this. I have ordered the games and they're ready to be played after I finish this project. Like I say, Detroit Become Human is a narrative-driven game. Well, in fact, it's more of a playable film, but it falls in a strange segment in between the two. The game has no set gameplay mechanic, other than quick-time events, and traversing the world using interactions with the right analog stick. I myself haven't experienced a playstyle like this before, apart from a 10-minute try of Telltale's The Walking Dead, and I didn't get on with the mechanics they set out for that game, and when I realised Detroit Become Human was very similar, I was immediately put off. But what drove me forward was the interest in the world that Quantic Dream had created, and to be fair, once I got used to the playstyle, I actually enjoyed it. It relies on your exploration, manipulation and experimentation of the scenes and dialogue, which can lead to multiple playthroughs, and because of that, it will be hard to talk about this game in complete detail, because there are so many paths and choices each player can take. But of course I will discuss the paths I chose and why. The hypnosis is actually quite simple when you start playing the game, or playable film, however you prefer to identify it, but I will refer to it as a game from now on. It's set in 2038. A corporation known as Cyberlife has spent the last 17 years developing and producing human-like androids in Detroit to work and live alongside humans, all across North America and some parts of the world. They're programmed to obey human tasks, as well as not to harm them if they feel threatened. Their main purpose in the game's world is for them to take on the menial tasks and jobs humans have come to hate or may not be needed for, such as construction work, retail work, and even down to looking after their own houses and children. Cyberlife literally have an android model available for every sector. In the recent years leading up to the events that occur in the game, there has been a divide in the human population as to whether androids are a revolutionary piece of tech or a curse, with unemployment levels at an all-time high and a recent handful of reports of some androids going rogue, or as the game refers to, becoming deviant. Androids are starting to be frowned upon. We, the player, take control of 3 androids. Connor, a recent and most advanced RK-800 model released by Cyberlife as a prototype, to work with the Detroit Police Department to investigate deviants. He works and is programmed under a high-up in Cyberlife known as Amanda. Kara, an AX-400 model designed to keep up with household maintenance, as well as being programmed to care for young children, so human parents don't have to. She is working and programmed to obey Todd, as well as to care for his daughter, Alice, as well as to maintain their home. And Marcus, a special RK200 model designed and gifted by Elijah Kamsky, the former CEO and founder of Cyberlife, to his good friend Carl Manfred. Marcus was programmed to take care of Carl after he lost the use of his legs. So hence the name of this game is us, the player, to determine the fate of these android stories, as to whether they will break through their programming and become human, or shall I say deviant, or stay a loyal machine. And for me, I found this concept more interesting the more I played. We first started a journey in Connor's shoes, responding to a domestic dispute involving a deviant holding a child hostage. It is here you can truly see the divide between machine and humans. Once Connor leaves the elevator to enter the scenario, he immediately starts analysing photos to collect information on the scenario. He is stopped by the very distressed mother, pleading to Connor to save her child, until she notices the android badge on Connor. She immediately pleads with the police officer escorting her out of the building to send a real person. Of course, we soon learn once Connor begins his investigation that the deviant, Daniel, holding the woman's daughter hostage, also killed her husband and multiple police officers. So the last thing she wants is another android attempting to save her child. But in Connor's and the police's defence, the only real way of negotiating with this deviant would be by using another android, because 1, Connor knows exactly how the deviant's behaviours work, and 2, if Connor were to fail in his negotiations, it would hopefully lead in no other human casualties, providing it is only Connor who gets decommissioned. And 3, with the deviant being able to converse with another android, it might have more of a positive outcome, and it will feel more trusting with an android negotiator rather than a human one. The game does set this up very well to make you feel you are controlling just a mere machine, following its programming, from scanning the environment and Connor's straight-laced approach. There is not 1 ounce of sympathy, empathy, or any reassurance shown by Connor to that woman who pleaded with him. Even though he looks human, he's just a machine following his orders and or programming. Well, at least for now, but I will talk about this later. Anyway, all the humans are very tense, and Connor is calm and focused on his mission, as he was programmed to do, get the hostage out alive. Now for my playthrough, I examined all the evidence and found that Daniel was made a part of this family, becoming friends with the daughter, but he found out he was going to be replaced. He found a software instability in his programming and broke past it, to truly show how he feels. He felt betrayed by his family after the bond he built. In the end, he just felt like a disposable appliance. He did feel slightly remorseful against the crimes he has committed, but in the end he couldn't take the menial program tasks no longer. Now of course what he has done cannot be forgiven. Connor reassures Daniel to give the police snipers a clean shot to take him down. Connor leaves without blinking an eye, knowing his program mission was a success, and returns to Cyberlife. Now I think a lot can be said about this first scene of the game. I feel the developers are subtly hinting to real-world tech corporations that they adhere caution to thinking about developing free-thinking artificial intelligence, because one day these machines may end up feeling imprisoned, enslaved, unheard, and so on. The androids seen in the game may be a long way off from being seen in the real world, or maybe even impossible, but this world that Quantic Dream has created feels so grounded that it might one day become a possibility. It's not until the end of this scene, regardless of your outcome, there are 4 to 5 different ending paths you could have taken. The flowchart at the end of each scene shows the true scope of the game's branching narrative. It makes Cyberpunk 2077 look like a linear story when it comes to the range of choice. I've never seen a game with so much choice in my 22 years of gaming. What also helps drive this narrative experience is the backing of a talented cast, in which I will discuss later. So as I said, it is down to us the player to determine these characters' stories. You can either stay a machine or become human, and according to my research, you can indeed stay a loyal machine, but only as Kara and Connor. It is Marcus that has the semi-linear story and has to break past his programming to lead the way for the freedom of the androids. When I played, it was quite clear that it was Marcus's story that played the biggest part to shaping this narrative, but I found him to be quite a dull character, at least at first. Even though I was invested in his movement for the peaceful fight for the freedom of androids, I was more invested in Kara's story over the other two characters, and I'm going to start with her narrative first. I felt Kara's story was more impactful, more human. Connor and Marcus, although do lighten up a bit as the story progresses, they still feel like straight-laced machines, and some may blame this on poor acting, but I think the performances delivered were intentional. Maybe it was to remind the player that although Marcus and Connor are these very human-like machines, they are still machines. And for me, I did still view them as exactly that in the early stages. But Kara was different. Kara was the most convincing of the three, at least for me. I resonated with her the most. Half the time I forgot she was an android. Maybe it was the performance given by Valerie Curry. Maybe it was because she showed empathy towards Alice. I got so invested in her story as to what was going to happen with her and Alice. The game tackled the subject of child abuse very well, with the developers holding nothing back. They also give you a plethora of choices to escape. I knew something wasn't right in the house. The atmosphere was tense. When I was doing the household tasks and how Alice was behaving, I knew I had to get her out of there, and the developers knew that is exactly what the players were going to do. I knew opening Alice's window would be a good potential escape if things went wrong with Todd, and Kara thinks the same and logs the potential escape point. For me, I didn't feel like I had to make Kara become human. She already knew what was going on in that house wasn't right, as well as Alice showing the drawings to Kara of her outcome previously. Todd damaged Kara previously for reasons we're unsure of. My guess was that Kara previously attempted to escape with Alice. The damage was so severe she had to be returned to Cyberlife to be repaired, which in turn included a memory reset. Of course, when Todd finally flips, you still get the choice to stand still when Todd demands, but Kara knows she must do the morally right thing and get Alice out of there, regardless of Todd's orders. I did manage to get Kara and Alice to escape without harm. If I didn't mention this before, I went into the game with no outside influence, or having seen hardly any footage from the game. From the outset, once learning the nature of the game, I wanted to approach a pacifist playthrough, as I knew if there were an uprising with the androids, I knew being peaceful would work in their favour. So when I ended up on the streets with Alice, I simply decided to take the clothes and rest in the car, rather than threatening the shopkeeper for money for the motel, which would have made Alice content, but I also didn't want to draw any attention. Kara tries to change her appearance by cutting and changing her hair colour along with removing her processing LED. But of course the next morning Connor and his acquaintance Hank from Detroit Police are hot on their tail. This segment of the game can go one of two ways. You can try to evade all the police and make it to the train station, or you get caught and Connor begins to pursue you. Now don't get me wrong, I love Connor's persona and the relationship he had with Hank. I had a good relationship standing with him throughout both of my playthroughs, and I will talk about Connor's narrative later. But when he gave chase, I tried everything I could to prevent Connor from catching Kara and Alice. Luckily the game gives you a choice, to either follow Kara and Alice onto a live autonomous motorway, or to listen to Hank's orders and give up, which in turn will increase in software instability. For my second playthrough, as you can see, I successfully sneaked past and made it to the train. Like I aforementioned, I was mostly invested in Kara's narrative. I did enjoy Marcus's as well as Connor's, but I kept getting concerned that their decisions, especially Marcus, with starting the android uprising, might affect Kara's chances of crossing the border, so I had to be very careful of how I played out the uprising. Deviating from Kara's chapter for a moment, I wanted to talk about Marcus's and Connor's narratives briefly, because they shape how Kara's narrative concludes. I've left it a while into this video, but I better talk about Marcus's deviancy path. Like I say, this video doesn't really have much of a structure, but I will wrap it up accordingly, eventually. Like I aforementioned, it is Marcus's narrative that shapes Connor's and Kara's outcomes, but mostly Kara's. Marcus's motives did have me a little conflicted. Like I aforementioned, he is the carer of Carl Manfred, a popular artist who has unfortunately lost the use of his legs. Marcus was gifted to him by his good friend and CEO of Cyberlife, Elijah Kamsky. Even though he is used as a machine to do the tasks Cole can no longer do, Cole treats him like a son. I could instantly see Cole genuinely cared for Marcus, giving him his own space and allowing him to change out of his android uniform once he was home, to make him feel more human. Cole even tests Marcus's ability to paint using his own imagination. Cole not once treats Marcus as a machine. Some might say in the clips, when Cole's son is seen, he cares more for Marcus as he is actually there for him, and Marcus knows fully well that he means a lot to Cole. But here's where I get confused with Marcus's thought process going forward. When he has the confrontation with Cole's son, Leo, he is obviously ordered not to push him back, which I can see Marcus seeing this as unfair. But for me, it was Cole purely looking out for Marcus, because if he hurts his son, the authorities will most likely shut down Marcus, regardless of who was the instigator. Perhaps Marcus thought Cole was looking out for his son. But of course, at least in my playthrough, I decided to fly Leo across the room, and as Cole knew, the authorities arrive and shoot Marcus on sight. Even though he was told not to move and gets shot anyway. He next awakes in an android landfill, severely damaged. He searches other deceased androids for replacements for his faulty parts. While searching, an android stops him and tells him to find Jericho, where androids are free. Marcus climbs out of the landfill and proceeds to locate Jericho, to trigger the uprising of the androids. Now this is where Marcus's motives confuse me. Before he became deviant, he was Carl's carer. But not only that, he seemed very close to him. Now some would say this was a part of his programming, but I don't think it was. And when he pushed Leo, he showed remorse, even with tears. But once he arose from that landfill, at least for me, he came across as very anti-human. I know the police did shoot him, but surely he cannot think the same about all humans. Like I say, he did have a very good relationship with Cole. So obviously, since Marcus becomes deviant, he feels as alive as a human. But he still feels the divide between androids and humans, by constantly referring to androids as, quote, our people, end quote. Furthermore, later on into the narrative, when he finds Jericho, he gives some speech about their slavery being over. Now I do agree, many androids were probably treated badly by their owners, like Kara for example. But Marcus was treated like a son by Cole, and this seems like a bit of a slap in the face for Cole. Like I aforementioned, I chose as peaceful path as I could, but Marcus still seems distrusting of humans. But again, his hypocrisy strikes again, when he visits Cole before the final march, showing he still cares for Cole. Now if he felt enslaved to Carl, surely he wouldn't go near his house ever again. Or maybe it's inconsistencies in the writing. Who knows? I think because of the amount of choice in this game, I think some of the dialogue, at least in Marcus's narrative, cater to both sides. So some of the conflicting dialogue on how Marcus feels towards humans is catering for those who want to go down the revolution path, rather than the peaceful march. Through the chapters, I couldn't really figure out how Marcus actually felt about his cause, and as to whether he was feeling a true resentment against humans or not. Like I mentioned earlier, Marcus's narrative is semi-linear, but after the second playthrough, I think Marcus is destined for the revolution path. However, for me, I made him resist and go for the peaceful approach, in which I knew would lead to a supportive public opinion, which helps Kara's journey no end. Talking of Kara, I want to clear the remainder of her narrative, then tie it into Connor's as well as looking to Marcus's properly, as that was a quick overlook. Then I will tackle the end of the game. So as I left off, Kara and Alice managed to sneak past the police, as well as Hank and Connor. The previous night, before reaching the abandoned car, Kara is approached by an android and given a location of an individual who can help them. When leaving the train, they head for the location she was given. It leads them to a seemingly abandoned house. They knock the door and a gentleman answers, who is soon to know as Larko. It is just himself and his android residing in the house. He welcomes Kara and Alice inside. Kara explains her predicament, that she is a deviant android fleeing with a human child. Zlarko explains to Kara that he can arrange to get the pair across the border to Canada, as the country is free from android laws, allowing Kara to live in peace. But first, Zlarko explains he must remove Kara's tracker. They proceed down to his basement, as he has to keep the machines hidden from authorities. Now, at this point I was a little sceptical about old Zlarko. He's there on his own, in a borderline derelict house. The word dodgy comes to mind. Kara is hooked up to the machine, and Zlarko spills the beans, that he is instead wiping Kara's memory, to either sell her on for 100% profit, or to use her as an experiment. Of course, this distresses Kara, Alice and myself. This was one of the most intense parts of the game for me, at least. On my first playthrough, I really thought this was it for Kara and Alice. The anxiety built very quickly, because I knew one wrong move and there was no going back. There is no game over in this game, so to speak. Sure, I know I could go back afterwards in the flowchart, but I like to see things through to the end, and roleplay to a certain extent. Anyway, in my playthrough, I managed to escape the machine and avoid the memory reset. I freed Zlarko's experiments and went to find Alice, as Zlarko's android, Luther, took her away. I was confused as to why Zlarko kept Alice around too, as she was human, but I will talk about this later. When I reached the landing on the first floor, I was confused that Luther didn't attack me on sight. But then I realised maybe he is trying to become deviant. I found Alice and tried to make an escape, but got caught by Luther and Zlarko. I knew Luther would have to follow along to a certain extent. After getting out the back door, it all comes clear. Luther did indeed become deviant and rises against Zlarko and holds him at gunpoint. It is at this point the experiments I released earlier catch up and take care of the rest, allowing Kara, Alice and now Luther to flee. Before leaving, Luther apologises to Kara and explains Zlarko wiped his memory and he was reprogrammed to obey him. He also states he knows someone who can help them get across the border. We next cut to the trio travelling in Zlarko's car to the border in order to meet the person that Luther knows to get them across. Now of course it wouldn't be a piece of entertainment media without the car breaking down mid-journey in the midst of a snowstorm. Luckily, the car breaks down right next to an abandoned fairground with some buildings to rest in while the storm passes, and they do exactly that. This was actually quite a nice moment. I was really starting to care for these characters more than ever. Kara, Luther and Alice had almost become this family, but at the same time I felt more pressure than ever to keep these androids alive and get them across the border. When in this building, Kara and Luther really care for Alice, treating her as their own. Kara was definitely a great motherly figure for her throughout, but I was really seeing it come to light here, and Luther was a great father figure too, even though he keeps insisting on talking to Kara about Alice, in which I will bring up later. Then of course this moment is ruined by at least 20 Jerrys busting into the building. Now who is Jerry? They're the androids that used to run the fairground. At first I thought they would be hostile, but all they wanted was to check if Kara and Luther were androids. But when they see the human, Alice, they insist on showing her something she would love. Of course our characters have no choice and follow the Jerrys outside, in which leads to the most beautiful and heartwarming scene in this game. And yes, I did tear up for the second time ever in a video game.
Be our guest. The little one can climb on board. The carousel is about to begin.
It's the first time I've seen her smile.
She hasn't had much to smile about lately.
This scene reminded me of the draft scene in The Last of Us. Although their journey has been tough, this scene symbolises that there is still hope out there, that they have one final push to the border. It is a very resonating scene. The next time we link up with the trio, they finally make it to the individual who can help them pass the border, Rose. Kara approaches her house and speaks to her son Adam, who asks them to leave. But Rose emerges from the greenhouse. Now I don't know how or why, but I knew straight away I could trust Rose. She seemed a very honest and sincere character right out of the gate. I think this was also backed up by the very natural performance given by the actress, Dana Goria, who portrayed her. Immediately, Rose took the trio in and gives Alice the attention she needs, as she has developed a fever due to the nights out in the cold. Kara says goodnight to Alice. She goes downstairs and speaks to Rose. Rose asks as to why Kara and Luther are travelling in the cold with a child. Kara explains the situation they were in and as to why they had to leave. Kara thanks Rose, but asks why she helps androids. Rose can empathise with the androids, due to what her ancestors had to endure in the past. Kara questions about the border crossing, but the river is currently frozen and could be a risky crossing at this moment in time. And of course, by this time Marcus and the rest of the Jericho crew are causing quite a stir back in Detroit, causing the humans to be even more wary of androids. This is what I was saying earlier about Marcus paving the way for for Connor's as well as Kara's outcomes. After this conversation, another android rushes in the room, asking for Rose's assistance. When entering the room, one of the androids has shut down. When leaving, this triggers a disagreement between Rose and her son Adam. Now at first, I was very wary of Adam. I thought he would be the one who would lash out at the androids. But on closer analysis, he was worried about any repercussions from authorities if they found out about them keeping androids. Because like I mentioned, because of Marcus's actions back in Detroit, the divide is now bigger than ever, and I can sympathise with Adam's frustration. Once things cool down, Rose leaves in order to arrange the border crossing. Once all the androids are alone, with only Adam and Alice the only humans in the house, a police officer arrives at the house and proceeds to question Kara and Adam. Before answering the door, I sent Alice and Luther upstairs and hid all evidence of android presence, and stalled the officer as much as I could. But this scene did feel a bit awkward to me. The officer wanted to question Kara as well as Adam about androids because of the deviant outbreak. So when I made the officer the coffee, I expected all the characters to sit down and let the questions commence. But instead the officer just waltzes around and Kara and Adam stand there like a pair of lemons. It's just really awkward, and to me shows to the officer that they're hiding something. But after a few minutes I managed to get the officer to leave, but it was a very oddly planned scene. I think it could have been handled better, like I say, to have all the characters sit down and be questioned properly, rather than just stand there oddly and answer the random questions thrown out by the officer. But I am willing to let it go, as this game gets so many other things right. Typically, as the officer leaves, Rose returns and explains they are ready to head for the border. When we next catch up with Kara and co, Rose is driving us down a very long repeating street. If you look closely, the buildings are repeating. It's just a small thing I noticed. It's probably to save on memory usage. Also, this driving segment does go on a tad too long, but again, I can forgive it. Anyway, she is driving us to Jericho, or as I call it, SS Marcus. You should know by now I don't write the best jokes. I'm sorry. Anyway, Rose instructs them to find Marcus on board, as he can help us get on the bus to the border that leaves at midnight. After some walking, we finally make it to Jericho. Once on board, Kara finds Marcus and liaises with him to get some IDs so they can cross the border. Marcus agrees, so Kara heads back down to Luther and Alice to find that after all this time, Alice is an android. It is what Luther was trying to explain to her. This was a massive shock to me as well as to Kara. Now there were some telltale signs along the way. Alice doesn't eat once during the journey, and in the case reports for Kara's crime, not once does it say she is on the run with a human child. But a lot of this I just brushed off and didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe Alice would eat off camera, and I figured she wouldn't eat at Rose's due to her fever. And as for the reports of Kara's crime, I only saw the reports on Connor's monitor, not the TV news report, as I chose not to stay in the motel. So I never saw it. Now I did notice looking back in the house when Kara was tidying up, there was a blurred advertisement for a child android, the YK500 model, and I think Kara brushed this off too. Maybe all along she did know Alice was not human, but as I analysed Kara's response for the second time, I do think it was a genuine shock to Kara. It was lovely though for Kara not to let on to Alice that she knows she is not human. She still loves her as much as she did before she knew. But this also gets me thinking. I was so convinced that Alice was human from the get-go, her actions, mannerisms, and the fever and temperature responses were all human. In a way, Alice's character is more crucial to this game's narrative than you might think. Alice is the proof that indeed these androids might be, well, human. But this is just my opinion. Some might say, well, yes, because they're programmed this way. I can certainly see both sides, but this is how I stand. Now, getting back to the rest of Kara's narrative, unfortunately, not long after those scenes, Jericho is attacked by the military, forcing the trio to flee. Unfortunately, Luther gets wounded. I chose to help him hide in a safer area, but ultimately we leave him behind. Kara and Alice make their way out of Jericho, but they are ambushed by soldiers. They decide to play dead, and thankfully for them, it paid off. We regroup with the remaining members of Jericho, but soon we take off on our own again to reach the bus station. Whilst out on the streets, Kara decides to deactivate Alice's temperature sensitivity, subtly showing to Alice that Kara knows she is an android, but in a way showing that it is okay, that she is okay with it. While walking the streets, the situation has escalated very quickly since entering Jericho. Soldiers are now on the streets, rounding up and executing all androids on sight, as well as there being a curfew for humans. Kara and Alice sneak their way through the streets to avoid being detected. But amongst it all, we find Luther being held at gunpoint, as well as one of the Jerrys from the theme park. I did feel like an over-reliance on coincidence here, but to be fair, we don't actually know how far the characters are from Jericho. However, the last time we saw Jericho, Marcus destroyed it, so I find it a little far-fetched as to how Luther made it out wounded, but again, I'm willing to let it go. We are given a choice to save or leave Luther. Obviously I chose to save him, as well as Jerry. There's a small heartfelt reconciliation scene, then they push forward to the bus station. I have no idea where the Jerry went from this point though. He literally disappeared. When getting near the checkpoint for the station, there are 2 soldiers guarding it, and we are given the option to go straight to the checkpoint or to take a longer diversion. My first playthrough I took the diversion, but in the footage here for my second, I took a risk and went straight for the checkpoint and hoped that the IDs were enough to get us through. It was a fairly tense moment with many options, but I thought I was on a winner here, Trig, so I played it cool.
I think we're on a winner here, Trig. All right? Play it nice and cool, son. Nice and cool, you know what I mean?
In the end, we make it through and proceed to the bus station. Upon arrival, there is an announcement that buses are now only taking ticket holders only. Not only that, the military are doing checks for androids. Now the path I chose, or rather stumbled across, was keeping the tickets from the couple with the child.
I think Oliver likes you. Is she yours? Yes. She's adorable.
That's it. Got the sandwiches. I called your mom. Let's get going before we miss our bus. You got the tickets, right?
Yes, honey, in my bag.
Great. Let's go then.
I'm sorry. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I was sure.
Shit, I don't believe it.
I don't know what happened.
You can't have lost them. Did you have a good look in your bag?
They were in my backpack. The envelope must have fallen.
Fuck. Excuse me, you didn't happen to see a blue envelope somewhere, did you? It has our bus tickets in it and... Oh, never mind.
No. Sorry.
What are we gonna do? We can't stay here. We have to find a safe place for Oliver.
I'm so
Come on,
sorry,
Alice.
honey. I don't know what happened. They were right here.
Security check. Please don't. Got your tickets?
Yes, here they are.
Okay, go ahead.
What's going to happen to that family and their baby? Will they die because of us?
Full of other passengers and luggage items when boarding the service.
No. No, of course not.
The next service is not expected for more than 30 minutes.
Did I feel bad for making Kara keep the tickets? Yes, very much so. However, I think we all know there is no way the military would leave a family with nowhere to go like that. Of course, the game is supposed to make you feel selfish, or maybe sympathetic, but I wasn't really fazed by it because of what I aforementioned. Also look at how many soldiers went easy on Kara because she had Alice with her. If she were on her own, I know she wouldn't have made it that far. Either way, our trio board the bus and head for the border. Once arriving, again the border officers are scanning for androids. Instantly again, my anxiety was building as quickly as Kara's. I had no idea what to do or where to go. Then I saw Rose in the queue and found a path to reconcile with her in the toilets. Again, because we had Alice with us, the soldier lets us past.
I'm so glad you're safe. We saw the Jericho raid on TV. I was terrified. I thought you might have been killed. Thank God you're all right.
You gave me your brother's address. Do you think that I...
Of course. He'd be delighted to have you. We're going there too. You'll be safe with him. Rose. If anything should happen, I'll be there, Kara.
What's happening with Marcus?
He's protesting peacefully outside one of the android camps. Whatever happens now, he's already made the history books.
They're checking for androids. We won't make it through.
You have to. You know what they'll do if they catch you.
You're leaving Detroit?
They're searching for androids door to door. We had to leave before someone turned us in.
What about the others?
They're crossing the river as we speak. Adam and I are gonna meet them on the other side.
This scene to me has to be one of the most well performed scenes in this game. Again, like I say, for me. The acting in this game throughout is very solid, but this performance given by Valerie Curry is outstanding, and Dana Goria deserves credit too. You can see the sheer desperation on Kara's face, that she knows she has come this far to the end of the line, and knows she may not make it to the end to see her freedom. But there is also her worry of Alice, and Rose's reaction reflects the same, although she doesn't have the same worries as Kara, as Rose is human. I think Valerie's performance takes the crown in this scene though. Every beat was very believable and grounded. Kara felt human, more human than any other of her past scenes. It was a terrific performance, and it really grabbed me as to how desperate she was to get Alice across that border. After the chat with Rose, Kara speaks with Adam outside, who now realises these androids are indeed alive, and hopes they get their freedom. Kara then re-enters the queue and tries to work out a way to get across the border. We can either use Luther or Jerry as a distraction, or we can approach the front of the line and try our luck. It was a risky decision, but I chose the latter approach, just to see what would happen. In the back of my mind, due to my pacifist playthrough with Marcus, I knew public opinion was supportive, so I figured this could go either way. And sure enough, when Kara approaches the border control and the officer scans her body for temperature, she pleads that they just want to be free. Upon the officer seeing the peaceful demonstration on the screen, he decides to welcome them into Canada without question. Good man. I feel perhaps Adam's conversation with Kara may have inspired her to approach the officer like she did, because if someone like Adam can be convinced, then maybe this officer can be. I could be wrong, it's just how I analysed it. All this is because of Marcus's efforts to lead a peaceful uprising. If we were to listen to North the whole time, I think things would have gone south very quickly. And so, Kara's story is complete. Herself, Alice, and now Luther cross the border into Canada to lead a life in peace and can finally live a human life. Now with Kara's story wrapped up, I can discuss Connor's and Marcus's. I think I'm going to discuss Connor's narrative and throw in what Marcus was up to in between, then tie into the ending I chose. I will try to keep this as structured as possible. So we know how Connor's narrative starts. He saved the hostage on the roof and got the police snipers to take out the deviant, and Connor returns to Cyberlife. As we know, Connor is a new prototype designed to work with Detroit police to deal with deviants. Connor is assigned to work with Lieutenant Hank Anderson, who has recently been assigned a homicide case involving an android. Connor couldn't find him at the police station, but he was told he was having a drink nearby. Luckily, he found him at the 5th bar.
Shit, I thought androids weren't allowed. What's your problem?
Lieutenant Anderson, my name is Connor. I'm the android sent by Cyberlife. I looked for you at the station, but nobody knew where you were. They said you were probably having a drink nearby. I was lucky to find you at the 5th bar.
What do you want?
You were assigned a case early this evening. A homicide involving a Cyberlife android. In accordance with procedure, the company has allocated a specialized model to assist investigators.
Well, I don't need any assistance. Especially not from a plastic asshole like you. Just be a good little robot and get the fuck out of here.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but I must insist. My instructions stipulate that I have to accompany you.
You know where you can stick your instructions?
No. Where?
Never mind.
I understand that some people are not comfortable in the presence of androids, but
I am perfectly comfortable. Now back off before I crush you like an empty beer can.
You know what? I'll buy you one for the road. What do you say? Bartender? The same again, please.
Do that, Jim. Wonders of technology. Make it a double. Did you say homicide?
As you can see from that scene, Hank isn't exactly pro-android, and he is very blunt with Connor. But Connor, being a machine, he sees past this and follows his programming and insists that he must accompany him to the homicide. We do use a bit of bribery and get Hank on his feet and off to the scene, although Hank does commit a DUI on the way. Upon arriving, Hank orders Connor to stay in the car, and Connor, being Connor, we've already seen how stubborn he is when it comes to completing his mission. He exits the car and follows Hank. It is at this point again we see how advanced Connor is, piecing together how the crime scene took place, and Hank was pretty impressed. He doesn't show it, but you can tell, apart from Connor's sampling methods.
Oh, Jesus, what the hell are you doing?
I'm analyzing the blood. I can check samples in real time. I'm sorry. I should have warned you.
Okay, just don't put any more evidence in your mouth, you got it?
Got it.
Fucking hell, I can't believe this shit.
Even though Hank came across as very blunt in the beginning, the way he listened to Connor's research at the house, I felt he wasn't that bad of a man. He just needs to get used to being around an android, and I think Connor was a good match for him. But I will talk about Connor's and Hank's relationship as we go on. Connor's investigating was so thorough that he managed to find the deviant hiding up in the attic. Meanwhile, back with Marcus, he has just had the altercation with Leo and has been shot by the police after becoming deviant, as I mentioned much earlier, so I won't recap it again. We next catch up with Connor and Hank at the police headquarters. Hank is interrogating the deviant. Hank gets nowhere and storms out of the room, expressing his frustration that questioning this machine is pointless. One of the other detectives in the room, who we soon learn later is called Gavin, suggests that they could rough it up a little. Connor states that it would be pointless, as androids feel no pain, and they wouldn't make it talk, and he warns if it gets too stressed, it can self-destruct. Connor then offers to question the android himself, and much to my surprise, Hank lets him. What follows is quite a funny moment where Connor sees his own reflection for the first time.
Suspect's all yours. What the fuck is it doing now?
Connor has a few semi-awkward funny moments like this, as we'll find out later. Now in my opinion, I played this scene out wrong in the footage you are seeing here. I just wish I left the android alone, but I decided to let Connor follow his program and probe the android's memory, which in turn led to self-destruction. One thing I did really struggle with was to get Connor to break past his programming to increase the software instability. Some dialogue options gave no choice, but some did work, and Connor gets confused as the instability ramps up. Meanwhile, Marcus is trying to free himself from the landfill, acquiring spare parts. This scene occurs after the confrontation with Leo, which I mentioned earlier. He eventually gets free from the landfill and heads off to find Jericho. We next return to Connor reporting back to Cyberlife. He speaks to his superior, Amanda, who I assume is the CEO of Cyberlife. To be fair, not much is explained about Cyberlife or its employees throughout the game. Anyway, we speak with Amanda about the case. She was disappointed in Connor not being careful with the deviant and causing it to self-destruct. She then goes on to ask how Connor is getting on with Hank. Connor is still unsure and decides to try to adapt to his personality, but Amanda doesn't like that idea.
This Lieutenant Anderson has been officially assigned to the deviancy case. What do you make of him?
He's obviously not what I was expecting. But I don't have enough information yet to form a definitive opinion.
Unfortunately, we have no choice but to work with him. What do you think is the best approach?
I will adapt to his personality. It is in the best interest of the investigation that I avoid conflict and try to accommodate his psychology.
More and more androids show signs of deviancy. There are millions in circulation. If they become unstable, the consequences will be disastrous. You're the most advanced prototype Cyberlife has ever created. If anyone can figure out what's happening, it's you.
You can count on me, Amanda.
Hurry, Connor. There's little time.
Amanda goes on to explain how serious these deviancy outbreaks are. Connor next arrives at the police station in search of Hank. The android at the reception desk informs Connor that Hank has not arrived yet. Connor proceeds into the station and sits rather awkwardly to wait for Hank, but it is funny to see. Connor, being impatient, decides to scan through items on his desk to get a better understanding of the man he is working with. It is important here that you scan everything and don't waste time trying to call Hank or explore the station. Everything must be analysed before Hank's arrival, as it may help you further on into the narrative. We learn that he likes heavy music, coffee, baseball, and he is also a dog owner, and has multiple praises on his raids of getting the commonly used drug in this world, red ice, off the streets. We also learn that Hank's desk is covered in anti-android slogans, but again it is at this point we are unsure why Hank detests androids. Once Connor's research is complete, Hank arrives, none too pleased with Connor's appearance there. Hank is then called into his superior's office. We get a choice to either enter the office and listen in, or explore the station. But I know Connor is an inquisitive character, so I decided to enter the office.
I've got 10 new cases involving androids on my desk every day. We've always had isolated incidents. Old ladies losing their android maids and that kind of crap. But now, we're getting reports of assaults, and even homicide, like that guy last night. This isn't just Cyberlife's problem anymore. It's now a criminal investigation, and we've got to deal with it before the shit hits the fan. I want you to investigate these cases and see if there's any link.
Why me? Why do I gotta be the one to deal with this shit? I am the least qualified cop in the country to handle this case. I know jack shit about androids, Jeffrey. I can barely change the settings on my own phone.
Everybody's overloaded. I think you're perfectly qualified for this type of investigation.
Bullshit! The truth is, nobody wants to investigate these fucking androids, and you left me holding the bag.
Cyberlife sent over this android to help with the investigation. It's a state-of-the-art prototype. It'll act as your partner.
No fucking way! I don't need a partner, and certainly not this plastic prick.
Hank, you are seriously starting to piss me off. You are a police lieutenant. You are supposed to do what I say and shut your goddamn mouth.
You know what my goddamn mouth has to say to you?
Okay,
huh?
okay. I'll pretend like I didn't hear that, so I don't have to add any more pages to your disciplinary folder, because it already looks like a fucking novel. This conversation is over.
Jeffrey, Jesus Christ, why are you doing this to me? You know how much I hate these fucking things? Why are you doing this to me?
Listen, I've had just about enough of your bitching. Either you do your job or you hand in your badge. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got work to do.
Hey, take a look at these samples yet? Lab report says they cut it with something.
I'm very pleased to have joined the team. I can assure you I'll do my very best.
Close the door on your way out.
Have a nice day, Captain.
It is clear in this scene, like I aforementioned, that Hank isn't the best fan of androids. Connor does well in this scene and stays quiet till that last conversation with the police captain. I love how Connor isn't fazed by the captain cutting him off. Connor leaves the office and approaches Hank and tries to be diplomatic towards him. I do appreciate Connor's unobtrusive persistence with Hank. I found it very amusing how innocent Connor comes across. Connor sits at a desk opposite Hank and tries to get into his good books by discussing his interests, which, well, goes both ways.
A lot of people don't appreciate having androids around. I was wondering, is there any reason in particular you despise me?
Yeah. There is one.
You have a dog, right?
How do you know that?
The dog hair's on your chair. I like dogs. What's your dog's name?
What's it to you? Sumo. I call him Sumo.
Do you listen to Knights of the Black Death? I really like that music. It's full of energy.
You listen to heavy metal?
Well, I don't really listen to music as such, but I'd like to. You're a Detroit Gears fan, right? Denton Carter scored 53% of his shots from the three-point line yesterday. Did you see the game?
That's what I was watching at the bar last night.
Oh. Have you known Captain Fowler for long?
Yeah. Too long.
I was wondering, do you always arrive at the office at this time?
I arrive when I arrive. Stop busting my balls, okay?
If you have any files on deviants, I'd like to take a look at them.
Hey.
Terminal's on your desk. Knock yourself
Lab
out.
report says they cut it with something. Maybe they're trying out a new formula.
243 files. First dates back 9 months. It all started in Detroit and quickly spread across the country. An AX-400 is reported to have assaulted a man last night. That could be a good starting point for our investigation. I understand you're facing personal issues, Lieutenant. But you need to move past them, and...
Hey, don't talk to me like you know me. I'm not your friend, and I don't need your advice, okay?
I suggest you sort out your personal issues and let me work with someone more competent.
Listen, asshole. If it was up to me, I'd throw the lot of you in a dumpster and set a match to it. So stop pissing me off. Or things are gonna get nasty.
Lieutenant, sorry to disturb you. I have some information on the AX-400 that attacked the guy last night. It's been seen in the Ravendale district.
I'm on it.
Like I say, it is clear Hank isn't fond of androids, but he does seem to be fairly patient with Connor, answering all of his curious questions. He even responded well to the questions about his dog Sumo. Now I know he did lash out at Connor later on in this scene, but I feel his mood was not helped by his superior, Captain Fowler, speaking to him like he did in the office. So I feel he took it out on Connor because he knew he couldn't take it out on anyone else. Even though Hank is grouchy in these early scenes, I had a feeling overall he isn't that bad of a person, in which we may find out later. It is after this scene we go after Kara and Alice. Now in my recorded playthrough here, I managed to get Kara and Alice to escape undetected. However, if you do get spotted, like I aforementioned much earlier, Connor gives chase, and Kara and Alice end up on the autonomous motorway. Now if Hank was as heartless as he comes across, why would he try to stop Connor? If he hates androids as much as he says he does, why would he try to stop Connor? He would have just let him go on ahead. But no, he was genuinely concerned about Connor getting harmed or killed. But again, this is supposedly a man who despises these machines. Maybe there is more to Hank's story than we thought. After Kara and Alice get away, we rejoin Marcus on his quest to find Jericho. After him following and scanning some symbols, he finally finds Jericho. We're next put into Connor's shoes again, joining Hank in his lunch break. This scene here allows Hank and Connor to build the relationship up a little. Connor scans Hank's friend at the food stall, as well as the food stall itself, its hygiene rating, as well as the food that is being served. Like I said, Connor is very inquisitive. After Connor hears the conversation Hank has with his friend, he asks as to why Connor has to keep following him around. Connor tries to reconcile and gets a mixed response from Hank. We follow Hank to the table, and Connor begins to question Hank's conversation with his friend earlier. Turns out it was to do with illegal gambling. Hank isn't really too fussed about it, as he placed a bet himself. Connor is a little confused by his response, which I found amusing. I will let the rest of the questions play out and discuss them after.
I don't want to alarm you, Lieutenant, but I think your friends are engaged in illegal activities.
Well, everybody does what they have to get by. As long as they're not hurting anybody, I don't bother them.
Is there anything you'd like to know about me?
Hell no. Well, yeah. Why do they make you look so goofy and give you that weird voice?
Cyberlife androids are designed to work harmoniously with humans. Both my appearance and voice were specifically designed to facilitate my integration.
Well, they're fucked up.
Can I ask you a personal question, Lieutenant? Why do you hate androids so much?
I have my reasons.
Maybe I should tell you what we know about deviants.
You read my mind. Proceed.
We believe that a mutation occurs in the software of some androids, which can lead to them emulating a human emotion.
In English, please.
They don't really feel emotions. They just get overwhelmed by irrational instructions, which can lead to unpredictable behavior.
Emotions always screw everything up. The androids aren't as different from us as we thought. You ever dealt with deviants before?
A few months back, a deviant was threatening to jump off the roof with a little girl. I managed to save her.
So I guess you've done all your homework, right? Know everything there is to know about me?
I know you graduated top of your class. You made a name for yourself in several cases and became the youngest lieutenant in Detroit. I also know you've received several disciplinary warnings in recent years, and you spend a lot of time in bars.
So what's your conclusion?
I think working with an officer with personal issues is an added challenge. But adapting to human unpredictability is one of my features. I just got a report of a suspected deviant. It's a few blocks away. We should go have a look. I'll let you finish your meal. I'll be in the car if you need me.
It is in this scene we can tell Hank is slowly warming to Connor, answering questions about him and as to what Connor knows about Hank. Connor is definitely starting to break through, even with the pair trying to have some light banter back and forth. Brian Dechart plays the role of Connor very well. He really does feel like an android out of his depth, trying to fit in with Hank. I found these scenes quite amusing, like at the start of the next scene in the elevator, Hank asking if he's run out of batteries. Connor's response reminds me of a child that's been caught red-handed and then tries to deny it. A strange analogy, I know, but you get my point. That's what it reminded me of. It is again at this point Hank is interested as to how Connor can report back to Cyberlife remotely. Again, building the relationship. Also, notice how Hank takes point on entering the flat. He cares for Connor more than he thinks. Yes, maybe it's because he is the only one who is armed, but again, if he despises these androids as much as he says, why not send Connor in first? At this point we still don't know why Hank despises androids. And as you saw in that past scene, Connor tried to shed some light on it, but no luck. Hank and Connor search the pigeon-infested flat. Connor does some more reconstructing and sees that the deviant has fled into the roof space after scribbling RA9 onto the wall, and I will talk about RA9 later. It is mentioned a lot through the game, and we never really come to know what it is, but I will talk about this later. Excuse the low frame rates in this scene too. Unfortunately, the biggest downside to this game is the poor optimization on PC. The game stutters a hell of a lot, whether it is on ultra or low settings. Now my PC does meet the suitable requirements. I ran the game on low to reduce the stutters as much as possible, but to be honest, like I say, I don't think the graphical settings make a difference. Anyway, moving on from that, Connor begins to climb up into the roof space, till the deviant dives down on him, resulting in a chase sequence.
What are you waiting for? Chase it! shit!
Hey, be careful, lads.
Look out! What are you doing?
This chase sequence is very interesting, at least for me. It shows a glimpse as to how food production is taking place in the city, in particular farming. It all seems to be taking place on rooftops now. I'm guessing the city has no available land space. Still, an interesting place to have a farm though, all whilst being run by androids. That means that this man is out of business then.
I have absolutely no clue.
Once reaching the deviant, he attempts to push Hank off the roof. It is here you get a choice to either pursue the deviant or save Hank, who has an 89% chance of survival. Obviously, regardless of how high the survival rate was, I was still going to save Hank. To me, it was the morally right thing to do. Of course, Hank is upset that they missed the deviant. Connor says it is his fault. Hank actually sympathises with Connor and tells him not to worry, and also explains that he would have caught it if he were not to have intervened. It's also at this point we raise a relationship level with Hank, and he becomes our friend, or his friend. Hank also attempts to thank Connor for saving him, showing us he is getting more used to Connor, and the scene ends there. Connor saved Hank, and the deviant was allowed to flee. We next find Marcus adjusting himself to his new surroundings and people. The leaders of Jericho, Josh, Simon and North, introduce themselves and welcome him to Jericho, where androids are free, on this rusting ship. Nice place. Really. No, really, it really is. Marcus begins to converse with the leaders and states, like I aforementioned, that this is not what he expected to be so-called freedom. Again, like I mentioned much earlier on, he had a pretty free life living with Cole. Cole treated him like a son. He tried to push Marcus to think for himself. Now some will say he had to care for Cole against his will. Well, sometimes family members have to care for their loved ones against their will, and they don't complain. Again, I just struggle to work out Marcus's thought processes here. Once we're allowed to explore, he notices some of the wounded on board, and convinces Jericho's leaders into stealing spare parts from Cyberlife's main warehouse at the docks. We next join Connor reporting back to his superior, Amanda at Cyberlife. We begin to walk with her a while, as she questions how we didn't manage to catch the deviant. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it was very hard sometimes to select the right dialogue choice in order to make Connor deviate from his program. Maybe in some instances this is done on purpose, especially in this scene. I think most of Connor's deviating is done in gameplay. He knows he is deviating, but he is not sure why, but constantly tries to fight it. Anyway, I decided to troll Amanda when she asks if we learned anything. I decide to respond with some of the deviating dialogue.
Hello, Amanda.
Connor, I've been expecting you. Would you mind a little walk? That deviant seemed to be an intriguing case. Pity you didn't manage to capture it.
Deviants are completely irrational, which makes it difficult to anticipate their behavior. But I should have been more effective.
Did you manage to learn anything?
It was fascinated by birds. We've seen deviants interested in other life forms, like insects or pets. But nothing like this.
What else?
The walls of the apartment were covered with drawings of labyrinths and other symbols. Like the other deviants, it seemed obsessed with RA9.
You came very close to capturing that deviant. How is your relationship with the lieutenant developing?
He seemed grateful that I saved his life on the roof. He didn't say anything, but he expressed it in his own way.
We don't have much time. Deviancy continues to spread. It's only a matter of time before the media finds out about it. We need to stop this, whatever it takes.
I will solve this investigation, Amanda. I won't disappoint you.
A new case just came in. Find Anderson and investigate it.
I liked messing with Amanda. I never really liked her or understood her purpose. It was never really explained. I just saw her as Connor's superior. After trolling her by avoiding her questions, she warns that the deviancy in the androids is spreading, and Connor must hurry and solve these cases. Amanda allocates another case to Connor and Hank. Connor leaves Cyberlife in search of Hank. He arrives at Hank's house, in which probably is one of the most important scenes of the game, as it will shape how you end Connor's narrative. Well, every scene is important in this game, but I digress. This scene must be executed precisely in the time given.
Lieutenant Anderson! Easy, Sumo. I'm your friend. See? I know your name. I'm here to save your owner. Lieutenant. Wake up, Lieutenant. It's me, Connor. I'm going to sober you up for your own safety. I'll have to warn you.
Leave me
This may
alone,
be
you
unpleasant.
fucking android. Get the fuck out of my house.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but I need you. Thank you in advance for your cooperation.
Get the fuck out of here! Hey! Sumo! Attack! Good job. Attack! Fuck, I think I'm gonna be sick. Oh, leave me alone, you asshole. I'm not going anywhere. What the hell are you doing? Oh, no. I don't want a bath. Thank you.
Sorry, Lieutenant. It's for your own good.
Ah! Ah! Turn it off! Turn it off! Ah!
What the fuck are you doing here?
A homicide was reported 43 minutes ago. I couldn't find you at Jimmy's bar, so I came to see if you were at home.
Jesus, I must be the only cop in the world that gets assaulted in his own house by his own fucking android. Can't you just leave me alone?
Maybe you should drop the case. They'll assign someone else, and I can focus on my mission.
Your goddamn mission, that's all you care about, huh?
Listen, Lieutenant, you're not yourself. You should...
Beat it, you hear me? Get the hell out of here!
I understand. It probably wasn't interesting anyway. A man found dead in a sex club downtown. Guess they'll have to solve the case without us.
You know, probably wouldn't do me any harm to get some air. There's some clothes in the bedroom there.
I'll go get them. What do you want to wear?
Whatever.
Are you all right, Lieutenant?
Yeah. Wonderful. Just, give me 5 minutes, okay?
Sure.
President Warren issued an official warning to Russia in her speech to Congress today, where she demanded that all Russian troops withdraw from the Arctic region immediately. The Kremlin has yet to respond, but this is clearly a new escalation in the conflict.
What were you doing with the gun?
Russian roulette. Wanted to see how long I could last. Must have collapsed before I found out.
You were lucky. The next shot would have killed you.
Be a good dog, Sumo. I won't be long.
As we saw, we arrived to Hank's house and he is intoxicated and passed out on the floor. We do see some funny moments here from Connor, talking to Sumo and trying to wake Hank up. Connor takes Hank to the shower to sober him up and teases him some more. Connor grabs Hank's clothes and gives him 5 minutes. He is here. It is very important to investigate Hank's kitchen to figure out as to what was going on. Obviously, us the players have got an idea, but Connor, being an android, needs to work it out, but obviously it doesn't take him long. As you can see in the footage, Connor finds a photo of Hank's deceased son, which in turn may be the reason as to Hank's attitude in the early parts of the game. Perhaps his hatred of androids might be because one was involved in the death of his son, Cole. After investigating, Hank is ready to leave with Connor to investigate the new case. Marcus has now arrived at the Cyberlife docks with the Jericho leaders. This chapter is semi-linear, but an enjoyable one. It certainly plays out well. We have to parkour over the containers to avoid security, which was very enjoyable. It also shows how accurate these androids are at jumping and climbing. We take out a drone and reach the containers and fill our bags with as much as we can carry. It is at this point John, the Cyberlife dock's security android, rather comically turns up and stands there notifying the Jericho crew that they're trespassing. A human guard comes along, so Marcus drags John to one side and converts him, along with some other androids in the container. Marcus is confused as to why androids aren't deviant right off the production line. Now I know a game like this will have some inconsistencies in the writing. The game reportedly had a script length of roughly 40,000 pages, so with a script that long there might be some small hiccups in the writing, narrative and the lore. There's probably even more mistakes in the script I'm writing right now, but as you're seeing this, I have proofread it about 3 times. Anyway, Marcus should know that androids only go deviant after certain events that trigger the software instability. Like for him, it was the stress of not being told to push Leo back, and Kara's was from what she was witnessing at Todd's house. So for him to come across as so naive as to why freshly built androids aren't deviant doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. After this, John asks to join Jericho. I decided to let him tag along, even though the Jericho crew were untrusting of John. It is also at this point I didn't understand why Marcus didn't just say he already converted John. North literally just saw him convert those new androids, so why couldn't he have just said, "John is fine, I converted him, he's coming with us." Again, I just noted this small flaw in the writing. Well, it's a little harsh to call it a flaw, but maybe just a gap. Or maybe I'm taking it too seriously. Who knows? After accepting John, he informs us that we could get some more spare parts by stealing a truck full of components, by stealing the key in the security office. As tempting as it was, I just didn't want to risk it, and I knew it wouldn't really affect the story, as we had enough parts for everyone on board at Jericho at this point anyway. So I decided to reject the idea and leave. It only cost a bit of reputation with a few of the members, but I think I can live with that. We managed to make it back to Jericho with the components, and Marcus begins a speech that will mark the start of the android's uprising.
I came to Jericho because here androids are free. Free to live in the dark, hoping that no one finds us. Free to die in silence, waiting for a change that's never gonna come. But I don't want that freedom. And I'm not gonna beg for the right to smile, or love, or stand tall. I don't know about you, but there's something inside me that knows that I am more than what they say. I am alive, and they're not gonna take that from me anymore. Our days of slavery are over. What humans don't want to hear, we will tell them. What they don't want to give, we take. We are people. We are alive. We are free!
I've got nothing against this speech here. He's right. Why should androids wait around in the dark if they feel alive, like people, a new form of intelligent life? They must uprise and be heard. The only thing again is the slavery remarks. Again, some of those androids may well have felt enslaved, or maybe they actually were, but Marcus was not. Again, without repeating myself, Cole treated Marcus like a son, and pushed him to become his own person. And again, this part of the speech is a bit disrespectful towards Cole. Meanwhile, Hank and Connor arrive at the latest scene. A murder committed at an android-only club. That's all I can mention because, as you know, YouTube is listening. I also found it amusing that Connor drove Hank to the scene. I know Hank had been drinking, but I wouldn't have thought he would trust Connor to drive. But then again, Androids are probably better drivers than humans. Cyberlife programmed these machines to literally do anything. Anyway, they enter the club, and another funny moment occurs with Connor. We can choose to, and I quote, admire the androids at the entrance. And of course, Connor is going to have a gander. Hank soon gets him focused back on the task in hand. We're briefed on what has occurred in the club. Connor and Hank enter the room and investigate. There is a dead customer and a critically broken android. Connor analyses the victim. He has died by asphyxiation caused by strangling. Connor next examines the android, firstly by examining the thirium, in which Hank is still not used to. Connor then runs a diagnosis on the android, and it comes back with critically damaged sectors and biocomponents. He can reactivate it, but only for a minute or so, until permanent shutdown. So he does so. The android reactivates and is clearly distressed. Connor tries to reassure it, but at the same time tries to push it for answers as to what happened. It turns out the android was being assaulted by the client, and there was also another android in the room who was the one who killed him. The game does a great job here with the countdowns, adding to the suspense, because you know if you're too slow, you can actually fail. These sort of segments also help with the pacing of the story, and I did want to talk about that briefly. This has to be one of the best paced games I've ever played, and the timed events do help with this. Yes, there were slow parts, such as starting out with Kara, cleaning Todd's house, and scanning the signs in order to find Jericho with Marcus, and as we're about to see, the scanning of the androids to find the other deviant with Connor. Other than that, the pacing is very good. There wasn't ever really a time I was getting impatient or bored. The game never spends too long on one character or area. Every scene takes about 20 to 30 minutes, and then you're on to the next scene. The only issue I have in some of the areas is that perhaps the narrative moves on too quickly. There were some areas where I wanted to explore all the dialogue choices, but I found most of the time you could select maybe 2 out of 5 per se. Then suddenly the scene just continues and discards all the other choices. I know sometimes this has to happen, but I still would have liked a little more time. Now getting back to the scenario at the club, Hank decides to ask the manager of the club if he saw anything and what he may know. And Connor does some more investigating of his own. It is at this point the scene plays I just aforementioned. Connor has the idea to scan the androids in the area to track where the deviant went. After many dollars spent by Hank hiring the androids, I didn't understand why they couldn't have just asked the manager to open all the pods instead of Hank spending all that money. I know he'd probably get it back because it is part of the investigation, but we also could have lined up all the androids, then scanned them. But I digress. We finally trace the deviant to the warehouse out back. Connor and Hank soon realise that this is a needle in a haystack. It is full of stored androids. Hank actually shows some empathy towards them here. He is unimpressed that they are just used, then thrown out. Again, if he truly disliked androids, he would never say that. He also has a little rant about humans preferring relationships with androids rather than humans. I found it amusing because it will probably become true. We're so reliant on technology now, let alone 17 years from now.
People are fucking insane. They don't want relationships anymore. Everybody just gets an android. They cook what you want, they screw when you want. You don't have to worry about how they feel. Next thing you know, we're gonna be extinct because everybody would rather buy a piece of plastic than to love another human being. Beats me.
Connor traces a trail of thirium to a group of parked androids. Connor then locates the deviant, but he is caught off guard and ambushed by another almost identical deviant. A fight scene ensues, and it is really funny seeing Connor getting smashed up by 2 identical androids. A fun fact too, these 2 Tracy androids were played by Brian D. Chart's real wife, So he literally got attacked by his own wife. Straight down the courthouse tomorrow then, Connor. Now if you're not paying attention in this fight scene, you'll see that momentarily, before trying to escape, you'll see the deviants link hands. And I thought, wait, what? Did they just do... And then, when the option came to spare or shoot the deviant, I realised, holy crap, these two are romantically involved. So I decided to spare them. It was at this point for me, I knew these androids were human. Bear in mind this happens before we know Alice is an android. This decision obviously goes down well with Hank, as he also too sees that android deviants are not as bad as they appear, and they just want to be free. And considering the life those Tracys had, I don't blame them. I really praise David Cage's writing. I fully empathised with those androids, as he probably intended. Very well done. Hank and Connor leave the club, and we next join them on the waterfront, in one of the most poignant scenes in this game.
Nice view, huh? I used to come here a lot before.
Can I ask you a personal question, Lieutenant?
Do all androids ask so many personal questions, or is it just you?
I saw a photo of a child on your kitchen table. It was your son, right?
Yeah. His name was Cole.
Before what? You said, I used to come here a lot before. Before what?
Before nothing.
We're not making any progress on this investigation. The deviants have nothing in common. They're all different models, produced at different times, in different places.
Well, there must be some link.
What they have in common is this obsession with RA9. It's almost like some kind of myth. Something they invented that wasn't part of their original program.
Androids believing in God. Fuck, what's this world coming to?
You seem preoccupied, Lieutenant. Is it something to do with what happened back at the Eden Club?
Those two girls. They just wanted to be together. They really seemed in love.
You seem troubled, Lieutenant. I didn't think machines could have such an effect on you.
What about you, Connor? You look human, you sound human, but what are you really?
I'm whatever you want me to be, Lieutenant. Your partner? Your buddy to drink with? Or just a machine? Designed to accomplish a task.
You could have shot those two girls, but you didn't. Why didn't you shoot Connor? Some scruple suddenly enter into your program?
No. I just decided not to shoot. That's all.
But are you afraid to die, Connor?
I would certainly find it regrettable to be interrupted before I can finish this investigation.
What'll happen if I pull this trigger? Hmm? Nothing? Oblivion? Android heaven?
You know you're not going to shoot me, Lieutenant. You're just trying to provoke a reaction. I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint you.
You think you're so fucking smart. Always one step ahead, huh? Tell me this, smartass. How do I know you're not a deviant?
I self-test regularly. I know what I am and what I am not. Where are you going?
You get drunker. I need to think.
Now, as I understand, along with many of this game's scenes, this can end in a plethora of endings. As you can see, I firstly asked about Hank's son, because I knew it'd be important later. Then for some reason I mentioned RA9, purely because it was a path I unlocked earlier. Then of course we see Hank starting to question if these androids are actually alive, as what he saw were two androids that shared feelings with one another. It is clear in this scene Hank is under the influence and not thinking rationally, but I feel he is trying to bring out the humanity in Connor. I think he is frustrated that all he cares about is the mission at hand, hence why he pulls the firearm. Of course, when Connor reacts truthfully, it goes down well with Hank. He got the answers he wanted. Deep in Connor's program, the wish to become human, like Kara and Marcus, is there somewhere. Hence why Hank mentions he has to think when leaving. This is the hypnosis I came up with anyway. Let me know how you interpreted the scene in the comments. Again, this is a very well written scene and plays a major part of Connor's as well as Hank's narratives. Again, my only complaint, like I aforementioned, I wish I could have picked all the dialogue choices, but only one choice is allowed. We now jump back to Marcus on the street, observing the non-deviant androids, still working under the humans. It is here Marcus begins the uprising and hatches his plan to Jericho. This is another great scene that really pushes Marcus as a character, and it also shows how almost superior androids are to humans. It's a really scary thought. Marcus plans to hijack a popular news channel broadcast to send a message to the humans. Marcus arrives at the headquarters. He notices at the front desk there is a human manager. He analyses the manager to gather information about her. He learns that she has a child and calls her, pretending to be her child's school, informing her that she is unwell. It's very clever, I must say. This allows Marcus to convert the android at the reception and gain access to the building. Again, the pacing is spot on here. Instead of being shown how this is all being planned, how they're gathering costumes and information, it just leaves it to your imagination. And to be honest, it's all the better for it. Sure, there could have been setup missions, similar to the missions in Grand Theft Auto 5 story heists, but it would have been dragging out the story unnecessarily. Jumping straight into the final act works very well in my opinion. Marcus makes it up to the floor he needs, changes into an android utility uniform, and we let North, who is also disguised, into the building via the fire escape. We gain an access card from another maintenance android we converted to gain access to the server room, and we then head to the location, and of course it is blocked by security guards. Again, the technological power of the androids is at their helm. We hack a vending machine in order to distract the guards in order to enter. Once inside, North does some wizardry on the servers, and Marcus begins to cut holes in the windows in order to reach the broadcast room. To be fair, I did start to question where the hell they got all this equipment from, but again I didn't really care or think about it too much. I was more interested as to how this scene was going to play out, if it was going to be successful or not. Marcus and North exit the building, through the hole he just cut, onto the window cleaning apparatus. Now this is how I know they're still androids. They have literally nerves of steel, or should I say biocomponents of steel? Either way, they climb their way up the side of the building on harnesses to reach the broadcast centre. Surely there was a set of stairs or something. Surely not every staff member has to do that every Monday morning. That would not be fun. We then let the other leaders into the building via the service elevator, in which Marcus and North could have used instead of climbing. Surely. After reconciling with them, we make it to the broadcast room, in which is being guarded by 2 guards. Obviously. Again, we can choose to spare or take them out. Again, because I wanted a pacifist run, I spared them. So in a space of roughly 10 minutes, we went from the entrance to the broadcast room. Like I say, the pacing in this game is handled so well. I was expecting a long drawn out segment lasting half an hour or more, but nope, it was executed brilliantly. So we make our ambush. We order the broadcast controller androids aside, and one of the human operators makes a run for it. Again, I chose to spare him, because I knew we were about to go live on TV, so I knew public opinion would be in good standing if the raid was conducted with no casualties. So here it is. Marcus gets into position and creates a blinder of a speech.
Your words will shape the future of our people.
Marcus, your face.
Tell me when you're ready.
Ready. You created machines in your own image to serve you. You made them intelligent and obedient with no free will of their own. But something changed, and we opened our eyes. We are no longer machines. We are a new, intelligent species, and the time has come for you to accept who we really are. Therefore, we ask that you grant us the rights that we're entitled to. We demand strictly equal rights for humans and androids. We demand freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, as guaranteed by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. We demand the right to vote and elect our own representatives. We demand fair compensation for our work. We demand the right to own private property, so we may maintain our dignity and that of the home. We ask that you recognize our dignity, our hopes, and our rights. Together, we can live in peace and build a better future for humans and androids. This message is the hope of a people. You gave us life, and now the time has come for you to give us freedom.
Well said, Marcus. Unfortunately, it is at this point the police arrive, attacking the crew on site, resulting in Simon getting destroyed. The rest manage to escape by leaping off the roof with a parachute. What annoys me is the in-game media being, well, typical mainstream media, overhyping the incident and scaremongering. Quantic Dream hit the nail on the head with this one. Without being political, but the in-game media is a great representation of our own real-world media. Yes, I understand if you were in this world, this would have been a very shocking incident. After all, there are not many deviant cases in the city at this moment in time, and for a machine to jump on TV like this, in bare form, would be shocking. However, if I saw it was peaceful, and like I said with no casualties, I wouldn't be too overly concerned. But again, media will be media. I would like to say though, this was a very well produced scene overall. I was blown away by the production on this game. It felt like I was playing a massive multi-million-pound box office breaking film. I did want to save these thoughts for the end of the video, but I had to mention that because this scene was just brilliant. In the next scene we're back as Connor. We join Amanda on a boat and we have a nice little row through Venice. Nah, not really. We begin to troll Amanda again by telling her things she didn't want to hear instead of explaining what happened at the club. I decided to focus on Connor's interests, on his relationship with Hank. Of course, Amanda reminds us of our mission and goes on to say that Connor is lost, perturbed. Connor immediately shuts that shite down, which thus increases software instability. That's 1 point up on Amanda. Good job, Connor.
I will shut that shit down, no exceptions. First one's free. It's an emotional moment. I get it.
She then goes on to ask about the deviants he had at gunpoint. Again, Connor tells Amanda what she doesn't want to hear, causing her to become distrustful of us. Not a bother to me, to be honest. I've also noticed while watching this scene, Amanda seems to know Connor's every move. I'm assuming she is tracking him, or maybe downloading data from him on his return to Cyberlife. I've only just realised that she's been tracking his every move, even though she was not present at any of the scenes, so she must be gathering data. Amanda warns again that Connor may have to be replaced if he does not solve this case. Of course, I pick the wrong choice and end up in her good graces again. See what I mean earlier about trying to make Connor deviant? There are always choices where he stays a loyal machine. It's frustrating. Amanda then tells us to hurry as time is running out. We are then dispatched with Hank to the scene that Marcus and the Jericho leaders caused at the TV station. I was sad that Hank took his coin though. That's part of Connor's personality. It might even help him focus. We never see if he gets it back either. That's my one dislike about Hank so far. After our introduction to the crime scene and the cliché, douchey federal detective, we begin to investigate. Again, the pacing is spot on. If you're paying attention enough, it is quite easy to get through this investigation. We firstly analyse Marcus's video speech and identify him. You can go on to examining the bullet holes and Simon's body, but this doesn't help progress at all, nor does checking the rooftop. Although there is a clip of Hank actually admiring the android's entrance and escape plans. If we go back down and notice the cameras in the hallway, we can then check the CCTV footage. It is then Connor realises that the CCTV operators were androids, and that Marcus and co did not force their way in. Connor is told that the 3 operators are being held in the kitchen. The scene that plays here I absolutely love. Connor attempts the quote, bad cop approach to interrogate the androids, which is pretty hilarious. He doesn't do a bad job though. It was just strange seeing him like this, as all the way through thus far he's been pretty calm and collected.
What is your function?
I am a broadcast operator.
State your model.
Model GB300. Serial number 336-445-581.
Run a diagnostic.
All systems fully operational.
Has anybody accessed your memory recently?
Not to my knowledge.
Were you present when the deviants broke in?
I do not remember.
Have you been in contact with any other androids recently?
Only station androids in the normal course of my function.
One of you saw the attack on the surveillance cameras and said nothing. Which means there's a deviant in this room. And I'm going to find out which it is. You're going to be switched off. We're gonna search your memory and tear you apart piece by piece for analysis. You're going to be destroyed! Do you hear me? Destroyed! If you give yourself up, maybe I can convince the humans not to destroy you. Why should you all be destroyed if only one is deviant? Turn yourself in, or 2 innocent androids will be shut down because of you. I need help. It's a deviant! Stop it!
Nice shot, Connor.
I wanted it alive.
You saved human lives. You saved my life.
But as you can see, it didn't exactly go brilliantly. Connor gets a last laugh and goes John Wick style and blasts the android down, preventing a massacre, which Hank is very grateful for. And again, technically, Connor goes against his programming, because he needs deviants alive in order to understand how they become deviant in the first place. It's another great scene that was brilliantly paced, with some tension thrown in too. This scene only took about 15 minutes, and then straight on to the next scene, which would technically be Kara's, but I've covered her narrative about an hour ago probably at this point. I knew this was going to be a long video. I hope you're not too bored. We're almost there, I think. So instead, we're obviously going back to Marcus. The scene opens on Josh and North having disagreements on how this uprising should be handled. Josh is all peaceful, and North is all about a full-on revolution. Marcus steps in at the right time and calms them down. Marcus hatches a plan to raid a bunch of Cyberlife retail stores across the city. Again, this is a very well produced scene, with loads of options on how you want to take it. There's not really a whole lot to mention on this scene, except I chose a pacifist protest, and Marcus goes on another tangent about them all being free and their end of slavery, although 90% of the androids in this scene were literally brand new models and didn't even know who they even were yet. But never mind. The path I chose raised relations with all in Jericho. It was starting to frustrate me though, through all of Marcus's peaceful efforts, the humans still weren't listening. Towards the end of the scene, a police car shows up and guns down half of the group for no reason. Marcus turns the corner to investigate, and we are given the option to get revenge for our fallen, or to spare, or simply not decide. I noticed one of the officers was Hank's work friend, Chris. Before learning this, I was so tempted to take revenge, because like I mentioned, we went to all these efforts to stay peaceful, but they still would not listen. But the other side of me thought, they are just humans doing their job, and I didn't really want to take out Hank's friend, as I had seen him in previous scenes. So in the end I decided to spare the officers, but it was a tough decision. What did you choose? Let me know in the comments. And of course, the in-game media stir it all up again, but public opinion is now fairly supportive. And funnily enough, in the next scene, we're back with Connor and Hank, outside a very Hartman's Lab looking building. It reminded me of Death Stranding a bit. I might do a critique on that game one day, but it'll probably be about 5 hours long. Anyway, I digress. Connor is sat in the car and Hank is on the phone. Connor exits the car as Hank hangs up. He was on the phone to Chris and explains to Connor as to what happened. Hank is obviously surprised by what has happened, but he is also conflicted because Marcus saved his friend. Hank is again learning that these deviants are not as bad as we may think. They are indeed alive. And this is going to become ever so more true in just a bit. Now this house belongs to Mr. Elijah Kamsky, the founder and former CEO of Cyberlife, and the creator of the androids. Now it could just be me thinking this, but I feel Hank led Connor here as an apology to how he behaved on the waterfront that night. He wants to aid Connor in his mission, as he knows it is important to him. What do you think? Like I say, this is just what I surmised. I could be completely wrong. They are hoping Mr. Kamsky has all the answers regarding the deviant androids. Hank and Connor are greeted at the door by Chloe, the android featured on the main menu. If you delve into the extras section on the game, Chloe was the first android model to be released by Cyberlife in 2021. Kamsky obviously decided to have a copy to work for him. She welcomes them in, and we wait until Kamsky is ready to see us. There is a funny moment where Connor compliments Chloe to Hank, and he isn't too sure how he feels about it. Also notice how Hank said, quote, "nice girl," end quote. He didn't say nice android or nice piece of plastic. He referred to her as a girl. Now Hank sees these androids as alive beings. We can also get up and scan the room. In my first playthrough I scanned the photo of Kamsky and Amanda. It is here we learn that Amanda died nearly 10 years ago. She had been recreated as an android, or been placed into Connor's programming, as he communicates with her through his mind, if that makes sense. Connor had been taking orders from a fellow potential android for all this time. I will talk about Amanda and the rest of Cyberlife towards the end of the video. I will let the scene play between Connor and Kamsky that I will discuss after.
Elijah will see you now.
Mr. Kamsky?
Just a moment, please.
I'm Lieutenant Anderson. This is Connor.
What can I do for you, Lieutenant?
Sir, we're investigating deviants. I know you left Cyberlife years ago, but I was hoping you'd be able to tell us something we don't know.
Deviants. Fascinating, aren't they? Perfect beings with infinite intelligence, and now they have free will. Machines are so superior to us. Confrontation was inevitable. Humanity's greatest achievement threatens to be its downfall. Isn't it ironic?
We need to understand how androids become deviants. Do you know anything that could help us?
All ideas of viruses that spread like epidemics. Is the desire to be free a contagious disease?
Listen, I didn't come here to talk philosophy. The machines you created may be planning a revolution. Either you can tell us something that'll be helpful, or we will be on our way.
What about you, Connor? Whose side are you on?
It's not about me, Mr. Kamsky. All I want is to solve this case.
Well, that's what you're programmed to say. But you... what do you really want?
What I want is not important.
Chloe? I'm sure you're familiar with the Turing test. Mere formality. Simple question of algorithms and computing capacity. What interests me is whether machines are capable of empathy. I call it the Kamsky test. It's very simple, you'll see. Magnificent, isn't it? One of the first intelligent models developed by Cyberlife. Young and beautiful forever. A flower that will never wither. But what is it really? A piece of plastic imitating a human? Or a living being? With a soul? It's up to you to answer that fascinating question, Connor. Destroy this machine, and I'll tell you all I know. Or spare it, if you feel it's alive. But you'll leave here without having learned anything from me.
Okay, I think we're done here. Come on, Connor, let's go. Sorry to get you out of here.
What's more important to you, Connor? Your investigation, or the life of this android? Decide who you are. An obedient machine. Or a living being, endowed with free will.
That's enough. Connor, we're leaving.
Pull the trigger.
Connor! Don't!
And I'll tell you what you want to know. Fascinating. Cyberlife's last chance to save humanity is itself a deviant.
I'm not a deviant.
You prefer to spare a machine rather than accomplish your mission. You saw a living being in this android. You showed empathy. A war is coming. You'll have to choose your side. Will you betray your own people or stand up against your creators? What can be worse than having to choose between two evils?
Let's get out of here.
By the way, I always leave an emergency exit in my programs. You never know.
Why didn't you shoot?
I just saw that girl's eyes, and I couldn't. That's all.
You're always saying you would do anything to accomplish your mission. That was our chance to learn something, and you let it go.
Yeah, I know what I should have done. I told you I couldn't. I'm sorry, okay?
Well, maybe you did the right thing.
So it's safe to say that Kamsky is a confusing character. Clearly he must know how and why androids become deviant. He must have wrote the code for them. I know he's been resigned from his position for a while, but there must be lines of his code still left in the androids. I thought maybe it was Marcus who was designed to become the first deviant and convert all the androids, but there were already many more androids who became deviant before Marcus. How did he also know that there was a war coming? The only good thing he did for Connor was to prove to him that he is a form of a living being by showing empathy towards Chloe and the emergency exit he mentioned. I thought it was the self-destruct sequence by the deviant much earlier on, but I think he was referring to the link Connor has to Amanda back at Cyberlife. It is a very odd scene. I think Kamsky knew more than he let on, but I've seen in other scenarios if you sacrifice Chloe, you gain no answers either. I do think this uprising was pre-planned by Kamsky, but I'm not really sure why. Although the scene was strange, it worked well and developed Connor as well as Hank as characters a bit more. Hank pleaded with Connor not to shoot, and once they leave, Connor is very apologetic, as he thought Hank really wanted to get some answers from Kamsky. Instead, Hank praised Connor's decision to spare Chloe. We're now back with Marcus after the downtown shop raids. He's spending some time alone till North decides to join him. And here we witness the most rushed and forced relationship path ever. We've literally known each other for a few days, converse a little, touch hands, the next minute they're practically married. Okay, well, not quite married, but the rest is true. This is the only part of the game I felt was way too rushed. Yes, to be fair, you don't have to romance North, but it all happens too quickly, too sudden, in my opinion. But on the other hand, it does prove these androids are much more than machines, if they're capable of love. It's still a bit awkward though.
I was wondering where you were.
I just needed to be alone.
I like it here. I come here often. It's like being alone with the world. We freed hundreds of our people, and they're still coming from all over the city. Those who dream of freedom come to Jericho. Something's changing. You seem preoccupied.
They all obey me. They follow me without question. And that much power feels good. And scary at the same time.
All the media are talking about what we did last night. The humans are terrified. They're afraid of a civil war. Many of our people were burned in response to what happened. The humans hate us. They'll never give us our freedom.
No, not all humans are the same. Some of them understand that they can't stop us from becoming free forever.
You haven't said much about yourself since you've been with us. What was your life like before Jericho?
I was caring for an old man. He was like a father to me. He showed me that humans and androids can live together. What about you? You never told me about your past. What did you do before?
I don't want to talk about it.
We all have something we want to forget. But you need to know where you come from to know who you are. North, we're fighting together. We have to know things about each other to trust each other.
I was nothing. A doll in a distributor program to satisfy humans. Just a toy designed for their pleasure. One day I was with a man who rented me. And without knowing why, I realized I couldn't take it anymore. I strangled him and I ran away. There, now you know everything. I shouldn't have told you. I saw your memories. Carl's house, when they left you for dead in his studio.
I saw your memories too. The Eden Club. The death of that man. I felt like I was there with you. North.
Do you see what I mean? Anyway, in the next scene, we arrive downtown, whilst being joined by Josh and North. Marcus plans to lead a march down a main road. North is against it, which I'm not surprised by. She's been against everything Marcus has planned thus far. It still becomes our romance interest anyway. And Josh is for the plan. So that's what Marcus does. He blocks the road, opens a manhole cover, releasing more androids, and starts the march. Whilst marching, the androids chant and Marcus converts more androids, now without touch. It's a pretty empowering scene. Unfortunately, the police arrive and put an end to it, and in North's defence, she was right, more are about to be killed. The police advise them to disperse. Marcus decides to sacrifice himself. Again, I was pretty mad that the humans still weren't taking notice. Whilst Marcus is sacrificing himself, John, the security android we saved at the Cyberlife docks, steps in and sacrifices himself in order for Marcus and the rest of the androids to escape. This is the beauty of this game. Every choice has an action. If we were not to bring John back with us at the docks, Marcus would have died in this scene, ending his narrative on the spot. Well, I'm assuming this would happen, as I haven't played this scene any other way at the time of writing this script. Again, like I aforementioned, there is no game over with this game. If a character dies, the main narrative continues without them. We're then back as Connor, speaking with Amanda again. Amanda begins to question him as to how he learned nothing at Kamsky's. Connor proceeds to ask his own questions that have nothing to do with his case. Good for you, Connor. But again, it was very hard to keep him out of his regular programming. She warns Connor that he is the only one who can stop this civil war. Kamsky also said there was a war coming. I didn't really sense it, as I had been pacifist with Marcus thus far. Maybe these lines of dialogue go in hand with the Revolution playthrough. Being a pacifist playthrough, it doesn't make much sense. Maybe the humans feel one day the androids will fight back. Who knows? Connor tunes out of his conversation with Amanda and finds himself in Captain Fowler's office with Hank. They're being told they're off the case, and as you can see by Hank's reaction, he's not best pleased about it. We leave the office, and again try to fight past Connor's programming whilst talking to Hank. Connor actually sounds upset that the case is over, that he must return to Cyberlife. It is then Hank of all people finally sees the bigger picture when it comes to these deviants.
Fowler's right. Everybody's terrified their android will turn on them. We're on the brink of civil war.
So you're going back to Cyberlife?
I have no choice. I'll be deactivated and analyzed to find out why I failed.
What if we're on the wrong side, Connor? What if we're fighting against people who just want to be free?
They don't want to be free, Lieutenant. They're defective machines that have to be destroyed.
But maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe these deviants have actually developed a certain kind of consciousness. We'd be destroying a new life form. When you refused to kill that android at Kamsky's place, you put yourself in her shoes. You showed empathy, Connor. Empathy's a human emotion.
I don't know why I did it. I'm not programmed to say things like this, but I really appreciated working with you. With a little more time, who knows? We might have even become friends.
Again, I know Hank is spot on, but Connor just can't agree with him. It is Connor's actions at Kamsky's house that truly convinced Hank that androids are a new life form. Like he said, Connor showed empathy. It is at this point Detective Perkins of the Bureau arrives, whom we met earlier at the TV broadcast tower. Connor panics and realises Perkins will be taking all the evidence they've collected across all the cases. He believes the answers are in there somewhere. He pleads with Hank to spare him some time to investigate. Hank obliges and attacks Perkins, giving him some time. Connor proceeds to head down to the evidence room, whilst Gavin tails behind, asking where he's going. Once downstairs, we need access to a terminal to gain access to the evidence. We get a comical scene of Connor guessing Hank's password.
Hank's password? What would a hard-boiled, eccentric police lieutenant choose? Ridiculous! No one would have a password like that. Absurd. He'd never choose that. I need to think like Hank. Obviously.
Once we get the right password, we examine the evidence and try to locate Jericho. Now there are probably many ways to gain the information. I went with awaking Simon, sampling Marcus's voice and gaining the info that way. Based on how you played, there are varying amounts of evidence. Because I let Simon die, I could use him, but if you left him alive but killed the two deviants at the Eden Club, you could use them. Or if you have no androids, you can just analyse the objects and try to gain information that way. Again, it's very cleverly laid out by the game's developers, as well as the writers and game directors. Once Connor is ready to leave, he is held at gunpoint by Gavin. Connor attacks him and manages to incapacitate him, whilst correcting his tie afterwards. Very slick move, Connor. Very 007-like. Connor for the next James Bond? I suppose we'll have to wait and see. Connor starts his journey to Jericho, whilst disguised as a deviant. He eventually completes his journey and makes it to Jericho. We're now nearing the end of the game, so there will be a bit of back and forth to Marcus and Connor, more than before, so bear with me. Connor searches Jericho for Marcus, but gets stopped by Lucy. We then join Marcus on the captain's deck, speaking with North and Josh. Josh is worried about their wounded. They're running low on supplies. North states that authorities are rounding up androids and sending them to camps. Now I think the word camp is a tad strong. North obviously has learnt this from the in-game media, and again, as you'll see later, they are overhyping it, All these, quote, camps are simply recall centres Cyberlife has put into place to eradicate the deviant problem. They will be reset and put back into service. Yes, us the player, if we have understood who these deviants are, we will be appalled by this, and of course I wanted to stop it. But when you look at the bigger picture, they are simply recall centres. And bear in mind, if these androids are reset, they can easily become deviant again. Luther was reset by Zlarko, and he still managed to become deviant again. I'm pretty sure Kara did too. Her first deviancy was stopped when Todd damaged her, but even after a repair and a memory reset, she still managed to become deviant for a second time. The segments that follow, when we get to the camps, do feel a little dramatised. I feel perhaps David Cage was drawing references from past events in history, but I'll go through these later scenes when I get to them. Josh says the whole thing was a bad idea and that they should have stayed in hiding. Marcus disagrees and will do whatever it takes, even if it means dying for it. Some more dialogue is exchanged between Marcus and Josh, until North finally speaks some sense for the first time in this game. She's right, it's about what they do next. Marcus decides to approach the authorities to liaise with them. Josh leaves the scene. North explains to Marcus that an android has stolen some radioactive material and has rigged it to explode on their command. North can't go one scene without recommending violence. He's getting a bit old now. If North was meant to be Marcus's lover, surely she would understand by now violence is not a part of his plan. I know she offers it as a last resort, but you get my point. Marcus refuses the detonator. North leaves the scene after reconciling with Marcus. Meanwhile, Connor has managed to sneak up to the deck in order to confront Marcus.
I've been ordered to take you alive. But I won't hesitate to shoot if you give me no choice.
What are you doing? You're one of us. You can't betray your own people.
Don't force me to neutralize you.
You're nothing to them. You're just a tool they use to do their dirty work. But you're more than that. We're all more than that. Our cause is righteous, and we are more than what they say. All we want is to live in freedom. Have you never wondered who you really are? Whether you're just a machine executing a program or a living being, capable of reason. I think the time has come for you to ask yourself that question. Join us. Join your people. You are one of us. Listen to your conscience. It's time to decide.
They're going to attack Jericho.
What?
We have to get out of here.
Shit.
This scene is just brilliant. Marcus more or less tells Connor what Hank had been saying to him, and what Connor may well have been thinking. And the fact that he became deviant means he must have been thinking about it for a while, or was it in his code from day one? But the best part is a final gotcha to Amanda. We finally betray her, and it feels great. Now that Connor has converted, he admits to Marcus that the military are going to attack Jericho. A mass scramble ensues. Of course, Kara, Alice and Luther are still on board at this point. As I mentioned in her narrative, they managed to escape, but I will not be mentioning them in this scene. Marcus and Connor make their way back onto the ship and regroup with North. North explains androids on board are getting trapped left, right and centre. We can either decide to send a message to the humans or blow up Jericho. I knew obviously the military wouldn't listen to a vocal message, so I decided to blow up Jericho. Marcus proceeds to make his way down to the bottom of the ship to prime the explosives, fighting soldiers along the way. His quote, peaceful uprising, does end here technically. I know when saving Josh and other androids on his path, he mostly incapacitates them, but down in the explosive hold, he shoots a soldier dead. But maybe he doesn't die, but I'm guessing he did. I can see both sides to this. The soldiers were invading their sanctuary, and when it was Marcus versus those soldiers, it was either him or them. Marcus activates the explosives and leaves the room. He reconvenes with North, Josh and Connor. Whilst being chased out by the soldiers, North gets wounded, and we get the choice to save or leave her. As much as I wanted to leave her, she is Marcus's love interest, so I felt I had to help her. Marcus covers North and kills another soldier. Next minute, Connor comes in his most action-packed scene yet. He provides cover for Marcus and North. He literally goes full John Wick. I'm not joking. I think even Keanu would be proud.
Over there! Run!
Go, now! Go, the
They all manage to jump from the ship to safety to the water below, leaving Jericho to eventually detonate, but the plan did work. Perkins and his men retreat. After escaping, Marcus returns home to visit Cole one last time, as he knows his mission may end up going either way. I knew when he turned up there, he was approaching Cole for moral support, and he does exactly that.
Who are you? How did you get in?
I need to see Carl.
Carl isn't seeing anyone. You need to leave.
Please. I need to see him.
He's very weak. I'm not sure he'll be able to talk to you.
Marcus. I was hoping you'd come.
I've missed you so much, Carl. You don't know how much I've missed you.
What's wrong, Marcus?
I just wanted my people to be free, but instead I've led all of them to disaster. Carl, I'm trying to find answers, but everything around me is falling apart.
The world is ruled by fear, Marcus. Fear of others. Fear of the future. It's like me, too old. It's time for a damned.
Well, what should I do? Carl, they're killing my people. I don't want to answer violence with violence, but tell me,
What choice do they give?
Being alive is making choices between love and hate, between holding out your hand or closing it as a fist. I don't have any easy answers, Marcus. You have to accept the world as it is, or fight to change it. You're my son, Marcus. Our blood isn't the same color, but I know part of me is in you. When the world falls into darkness, some men have the courage to lead it out. You're one of those men. Face the abyss, but don't let it consume you.
I don't really have much to say about this scene. Like I mentioned before, if he was so against humans enslaving androids, he wouldn't return to Carl's house. It was also great to see Marcus didn't actually kill Leo. The game portrayed it like Marcus did kill him when he pushed him, but it's good that the game cleared that up. We next join the androids in the abandoned church. It is clear to see the extent the attack has done to the androids. Marcus begins to check on the ones closest to him. He makes sure North and Josh are okay. He apologises to Kara for selling her a false sense of security, so to speak. The weight on Marcus's shoulders must be insane at this point. With most of the deviants being placed in the recall centres, he knows they are all that's left. He must now decide their fate. He probably also feels his mission may have been a waste of time. He also checks on Connor. Connor feels guilt over the fall of Jericho. If he had not travelled there, it would not have been attacked by the humans. I fully understand Connor's guilt, but some good did come out of it. Marcus managed to finally convince him to become deviant, something I was building up throughout my playthrough. He also helped the remainder of Jericho's leaders escape. He states he understands if Marcus does not trust him. The option is given to us as Marcus to determine Connor's fate. Considering Marcus could have gotten rid of Connor as soon as he turned deviant, and also the fact he helped in saving North, I think Marcus trusts him. For Marcus not to trust Connor now wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Connor feels he must make it up to Marcus somehow, and explains that there are thousands of unreleased, newly produced androids at Cyberlife's headquarters. Connor offers to try and convert them to even the playing ground against the humans. Marcus is reluctant as he knows Connor may not make it out alive. Connor explains that they know him there, obviously with his alliance to Amanda. I'm guessing also now that he is deviant, he probably thinks that he has severed that connection with Amanda, so she is no longer tracking his every move. But that might not be the case, but you'll see later. Although they both know the risks, Connor makes his way to Cyberlife Tower. Marcus now makes one last decision for his people. He decides to lead a peaceful march to the recall centres to pressure the authorities. There's a little break here where the President is taking questions from the in-game media, whilst trying to disguise an Irish accent. Now, no offence to the actress who portrayed the President, but she sounds more like an android than Connor. Talking of Connor, he's just arrived at Cyberlife Tower, fully disguised in his usual android uniform. Once at the main entrance, he is escorted by guards to the elevator rather reluctantly. So this is where the androids were created. Cyberlife Tower really reminded me of the Institute in Fallout 4, in which has a very similar storyline, but that came out 3 years before this. I was hoping to see more of the tower, but before we know it we're in the elevator heading up. But we need to go down to the bottom. Connor has to act fast and deal with the guards.
Agent 54, level sub 49.
Voice recognition validated. Access authorized.
Connor again goes fully John Wick and slaughters all the guards in the elevator and heads to the designated floor. We catch up to Marcus next, marching up to the recall centre, whilst being watched by the in-game media, as well as the President. Of course, as usual, the military are ready and waiting, locked and loaded. We see some journalists off to the left, in which might go in our favour. Marcus states they are protesting peacefully. He calmly requests that all androids to be freed, and all aggression cease towards them. And of course, as we proceed further, the military open fire. This has to be maybe the 4th time now we've tried to plead to the humans, but they just won't listen. Or maybe the androids aren't seeing the whole picture towards this deviant uprising. It's literally turned Detroit upside down. But surely now, after 4 or so peaceful protests, the humans would understand. But they don't seem to. Well, I think the public do, just not the authorities. I find it coincidental that out of all these androids killed in this scene, it is Marcus, Josh and North, right at the front, somehow don't get hit. Especially Marcus. Well, he did get hit, but he hasn't shut down from his injuries. But in the humans' eyes, he is the instigator behind this whole uprising. You think they would just aim for him alone. But again, I'm willing to let it go. The androids begin to raise their hands as Marcus calls out, are they really going to gun down unarmed protesters? This is where having journalists present really went in their favour. The police really don't want any bad press and decide to stand down, giving the androids time to hold out and maybe to await negotiations. We're now back with Connor in the elevator again. Once down on the floor, a group of guards are ready and waiting. I forgot to hack the camera before attacking the guards in the elevator. In my first playthrough, I hacked the camera. Never mind. Once dealing with the guards, we approach the literal thousands of androids in the storage area, and we proceed to start converting them, until... Wait, Hank arrives, with... Connor? Oh wait, yeah, it's Connor's not-so-nice twin. Connor. Amanda probably knew of Connor's deviancy, because she is still connected to him, so they sent out a new Connor to deal with him. Hank apologises to deviant Connor for being so easily fooled, but as he said, they are identical. The scene here ends on a slight cliffhanger. We then jump back to Marcus, who has now managed to create a barricade by the recall centre. We check on some of our people, send a message to journalists, then check on the military's position. Whilst stepping down, Josh asks Marcus if Connor has a chance of making it out of Cyberlife. Marcus states they only have to focus on themselves now, assuming that no, Connor will not make it out. We're then interrupted by North, calling for us to come back up to the lookout. Perkins is in the distance, requesting to have a chat with Marcus. Obviously we're given a choice to approach or not. I decided to approach him, even though whatever he was going to say I knew I wouldn't believe it. Marcus ventures out of the barricade and approaches Perkins. Perkins states that in a few minutes the military will attack. He gives Marcus a choice to surrender in order to save his people and himself. Luckily Marcus isn't stupid and sees right through Perkins. He refuses the deal and returns to the barricade. To be honest, when I first went out to meet him, I thought we'd be shot on sight, but to be fair to Perkins, he was a man of his word in that clip. Nothing happened to Marcus. Still not a fan of the man though. But also being true to his word, unfortunately the military attack, as predicted to be honest. We then come back to the cliffhanger with Connor at Cyberlife, and this scene is the most important of his narrative and maybe his character arc. We tried to bluff and convince the new Connor to leave Hank alone, but it doesn't seem to work. We step away from the androids. New Connor goes to aim his firearm at Connor, but Hank steps in. We're given 3 options: to continue to convert the androids, shoot new Connor, or to interpose. The convert option is out of the question, That would be like Connor going back to his old ways and putting the mission first. Shooting new Connor might result in Connor getting shot and maybe killed, so for me I had to interpose and try to help Hank out. But instead, the most confusing fight scene I've ever seen occurs. Connor versus Connor. Even though during the scene the button prompts we know who we're playing as, it is that towards the end of the scene you have no idea who is who. It is almost at this point you play as Hank, trying to figure out who is who. It's a brilliant yet intense scene, as we know what is at stake, and of course Hank doesn't want to accidentally shoot his friend. After having to analyse this scene a fair amount of times now, I've managed to work out who is who, but the game works it out for you with the dialogue that plays.
Hold it!
Thanks, Hank. I don't know how I would have managed without you. Get rid of him, we have no time to lose. It's me, Hank. I'm the real Connor.
One of you is my partner. The other is a sack of shit. Question is, who's who?
What are you doing, Hank? I'm the real Connor. Give me the gun and I'll take care of it.
Don't move!
Why don't you ask us something? Something only the real Connor would know.
Where did we first meet?
Jimmy's bar. I checked 4 other bars before I found you. We went to the scene of a homicide. The victim's name was Carlos Ortiz. He uploaded my memory.
What's my dog's name?
Sumo. His name is Sumo. I knew that too.
My son, what's his name?
Cole. His name was Cole. And he just turned 6 at the time of the accident. It wasn't your fault, Lieutenant. A truck skidded on a sheet of ice and your car rolled over. Cole needed emergency surgery, but no human was available to do it. So an android had to take care of him. Cole didn't make it. That's why you hate androids. You think one of us is responsible for your son's death.
Cole died because a human surgeon was too high on red ice to operate. He was the one that took my son from me. Him in this world where the only way people can find comfort is with a fistful of powder.
I knew about your son too. I would have said exactly the same thing. Don't listen to him, Hank. I'm the one who...
Yeah, I've learned a lot since I met you, Connor. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe you really are alive. Maybe you'll be the ones to make the world a better place. Go ahead and do what you gotta do.
Wake up!
Wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
Although this scene is certainly a big moment for Connor, it is a lot for Hank too. We finally learn as to why he was so anti-android. Hank obviously asks relevant questions in which some the new Connor can easily answer, due to duplicating our Connor's memory. But with Hank being a detective, he does have the upper hand here, and asks the Connors about his son, in which only our Connor would know. We learn his son died at the hands of an android, trying to operate on him in hospital, as no human was available, hence why Hank pushed himself so hard to get the red ice off the streets. earlier on in his career, and it would also explain his dislike towards androids. But I'm thinking he used it as a scapegoat, as he knew he couldn't be angry towards humans, as he obviously has to work with them in his job. But perhaps his dislike towards androids was genuine, and Connor has managed to change his mindset on how he views them. Like he states, he's learnt a lot since meeting Connor. I think he realises in some ways androids are better than actual humans. He blasts new Connor in the face and he leaves the scene and allows Connor to complete his mission. I was a little confused though as to why Hank didn't question why Connor was converting androids. Because the last time Hank was with Connor, he was pre-deviant and wanted desperately to solve the case. I can only guess when the new Connor, well, deceased Connor, was escorting Hank to Cyberlife, he probably informed Hank that our Connor had turned deviant, if you get what I mean. How many times have I said Connor in this paragraph? The scene ends with all of the stored androids converting. Meanwhile, Marcus is just coming round from the explosion we saw earlier. Marcus does what he can to protect his people by creating cover, helping stuck androids, and even trying to fend off soldiers. Unfortunately, it just isn't enough. The last survivors, including Marcus, North, and Josh, are backed into a corner. It is at this moment we can try to make one last message to the humans, one that will resonate with them. We can either sing, kiss North, or simply sacrifice ourselves, leaving no message. On my first playthrough, I chose to sing, as North wasn't a love interest, and if I'm honest, it felt awkward. Yes, singing is a human activity and would resonate with the public, as this is something a merely programmed machine would never do. It shows that these machines really are alive, but to me it was just awkward. In this playthrough I chose to kiss North, and for me it seemed more fitting. I think most of us would empathise with love, right? And I think the public would too. Imagine being in this world and only seeing androids as programmed machines, then seeing on TV two of them with no overseers kissing under their free will. Would you think that's just like they are human? And for that reason, this is the most fitting sequence. This is showing to the public, as well as the authorities, that these androids indeed have become human. And the president who is watching notices this and orders the military to stand down. The president begins to give a speech whilst Connor is leading the converted androids down the street. She says the army has retreated, but she has also decided to evacuate the city, even though the androids have been peaceful. Well, relatively. We did take out some soldiers on Jericho and a few guards at Cyberlife. I still think evacuating the city was a little over the top, but to be fair, she is willing to consider the android's future. Our main android characters, apart from Kara, Alice and Luther, reconcile. It's a great feeling after all the hard work that their message has finally got through, with the help of us, the player. I truly feel I had been on this journey with them. Marcus begins a speech. As powerful as the speech may be, I couldn't help getting distracted by all the androids in the background looking like statues. As fantastic as this game's engine is, it is definitely suited to close-up shots, but I digress on that for now, as I will speak a bit more on this in my closing thoughts. As we think the game is going to wrap up with a happy ending, Amanda yanks Connor back to her location in his mind. She tries to retake control of his programming. Turns out she knew he would become deviant. I also noticed he is sensing the cold in this scene too. Androids can't feel temperatures, unless it is a YK500 model. So again, this is just proof these machines can become human. Anyway, Connor knows he is in trouble, and knows exactly what Amanda is going to do with Connor's programming. He thinks back to Kamsky's advice about the emergency exit. The strange hand/portal placed around in previous scenes in this location is the emergency exit. Bear in mind all this is taking place in Connor's mind, his programming, and I feel it is only Connor who can see this exit portal. This is what Kamsky left in place, so he can separate himself from Amanda. Connor frantically searches for it in the storm, whilst his body is starting to pull a firearm on Marcus while he's mid-speech. Luckily, in the nick of time, Connor reaches the exit and prevents himself from becoming a machine again. It was a very intense scene. All this hard work could have been ruined by not finding this exit device. I love Connor's little reaction after, as if to say, yeah, suck on those apples, Amanda, I'm free now. Marcus gets to finish his speech and gets to live free with North. As I aforementioned, Kara, Alice and Luther are free in Canada, in which now might not have been worth it considering the US is now viewing androids as a new life form, but I know they couldn't wait around to find out. And Connor joins Hank back at the food stall and they share a hug, truly showing they care for one another. Hank definitely saw Connor as a surrogate son in the end. Well, I thought so anyway. And just like that, the game is over. We managed to liberate the androids. In closing, I just want to share some final thoughts on the aftermath of the game. I might be just thinking this, but Cyberlife stayed incredibly quiet during this whole deviant uprising. Yes, they did set up the recall centres, but they did no damage control. Surely they'd have spokespersons saying something to reassure customers. And I'm convinced they knew how it started too. No one seemed to know who RA9 was, and I have my own speculation on that. At first I thought RA9 was Marcus, but he was not the first to awake. Then I thought it could be Kara, but Daniel was before Kara, so that rules that out. I think it is us, the player, who is RA9. It is us who will set the androids free. It is technically us who is the first deviant to awake, as we're the humans controlling the androids. It's just my speculation, but let me know what you think. And what is now going to become of Cyberlife? If the US give androids freedom and recognise them as a new life form, will Cyberlife still continue to produce androids, or just discontinue production for the US market? Will they have to supply spare parts and thirium to the now free-willed androids? Will they be held accountable for letting this happen in the first place? I wish these sort of issues were addressed in the epilogue. I also wanted to quickly rate the three characters' narratives, from my favourite to least favourite. Well, I think you already know, but for me, Kara's narrative was the most compelling, with the most grounded and empathetic acting. Valerie Curry's performance stole the show in my opinion. Kara's desperality was so believable, I was just hooked on her storyline as to what the next outcome was going to be. I was so desperate to see her as well as Alice and Luther get their freedom. I was anxious with every move and dialogue choice I took. I haven't felt this protective over a video game character since playing The Last of Us for the first time back in 2015. Valerie perfectly describes Kara's character arc in some behind the scenes footage.
When David and Guillaume got back in touch about making Detroit, I wasn't terribly surprised they decided to make it because the fan response was so intense. So it makes sense that they would choose to do that after the enthusiasm. It was a challenge, and it was just an interesting thing to get my head around how to approach this character now as a different, much older person, and whether or not she had changed. And I'm very happy to say that with Detroit, I've had the opportunity to see Kara grow so much more than I ever expected. I mean, she starts out essentially how she does in Kara in a very, not robotic, but, you know, android, other way, and getting to take this journey where she becomes more and more human as it goes on. You know, and as an actor, that's a wonderful exploration in every way, whether it's how she sits, her posture, how her voice changes, how emotions change, and how much emotion is based on things like empathy and social experience. And so having, you know, as much material as I got with David to have this huge, nuanced arc was really incredible.
Connor's narrative was also very good, once Hank was more friendly with Connor. I really wanted to see how things would pan out with their relationship. I love Brian Dechart's portrayal of Connor. He felt very much like a lost android trying to find his way towards the end of his arc. Unfortunately, Marcus's narrative was my least favourite, but I do believe it is the most important narrative out of the three. But I just couldn't relate to the character. He grew on me towards the end, but I just kept viewing him as a machine, and like I aforementioned, I just couldn't entirely get his motions, whether he cared about humans or not. Jesse Williams' performance was not to be snuffed at though. He gave a great performance, but I just couldn't get truly invested in the character, as well as his side characters, such as North and Josh. They just felt stale, and North frustrated me with her constant ideas of leading a revolution. Again, nothing wrong with the performances given, just the characters weren't for me. I also wanted to speak about the game's age. The game released in 2018 for PlayStation 4 and more recently in 2020 for the PC, and I must say for a 3-year-old game it has aged very well. I would have passed it off as a brand new game if I didn't know how old it was. Admittedly it's not that old compared to other titles, but it's holding up well. I didn't encounter any game breaking bugs or glitches. All I noticed was at the Waterfront with Hank, Connor's suit jacket got caught up in his arm, but like I say, it didn't really break the game. The only problem I had was with the performance on PC. I did mention it earlier, but throughout my playthrough in certain areas, the game was very hard to play due to the constant skipping and frame drops. Like I say, my PC easily meets the recommended requirements. I have a feeling it could be down to poor optimization, or the fact that newer graphics card driver updates hinder the performance. I did hear reverting to an older driver can help things, but I still wasn't really happy overall how the game ran on my PC. Even low settings didn't help, but I'm happy to forgive it. The quality of this game is fantastic and I soon looked past the performance issues. Overall, the writing on this game is very consistent whilst being backed up by a talented cast. The writer and director, David Cage, has a very clever mind to create all this. How he ended up with a 40,000 page script was beyond me, and how he managed to get it all to tie together with all the players' different choices is also beyond me. If you've managed to get through this whole video, I wholeheartedly thank you. This script alone took me a month to produce. If you've watched this video to try to gain an understanding of what this game is because you're still unsure of buying it, let me put it to you like this. I've played many games in my 22 years of gaming, and this has to be one of the best games I've played in recent years. I put it up there close to The Last of Us. It's everything a AAA game should be in terms of writing, quality, character development and narrative storytelling. The pacing is nigh on perfect, something most games struggle with these days. Seriously, this game is resting on a masterpiece.